So, welcome to the New Style Theatre. No one's, I don't think, said that yet, have they? But this is a new development for IC this year, and it's a big improvement, I think, really, on the other theatres they had. And it means that we can now get to where we're going to be quicker, and it's a tailor-made environment for everybody else. I'm trying not to show my back to you down there, actually, so you can see everybody okay. No one's actually cut off. Right. What? He's trouble, this man, you know. We're going to have trouble from him on the panel. I can see it. There you go. Thank you for coming. We're now going to tackle probably one of the sexiest subjects that we can tackle in AV, because so much has been talked about it, but nothing practical has been offered about how we can use new technologies in AV. So we're going to try and get to the bottom of some of these issues with some of the people really at the sharp end of deploying them. And I'm not sure which end I'll start at, really. I'll start with no favoritism at all. I'll start from my left. Introduce everybody. To my left, it's Evan Grant, who's the founder of Seeper. You've probably seen some of his work around. There's Amelia Kallman, who is a futurist speaker and author. There's Matthew Drinkwater, who is the head of the head of the Fashion Innovation Agency at the London College of Fashion, which is a great title, isn't it? Amazing. But probably, perhaps one of the best titles of all is Sanj Surati at the end there, who is a digital atelier and founder of Tiger Heart, which has got to be a great job title, I have to say. But I mean, they seem to be getting better by the week, really. But there we are. So, technology, we're finding, you know, in the old days, they're terribly expensive. No one wanted to touch them unless they're integrated inside a box. No one wanted to have any kind of look or know how to deploy them. But the time has changed, really. The technologies themselves are becoming more accessible and perhaps more affordable, although content's still incredibly expensive. But we are here with a group of people who are deploying this stuff and who can talk about how we can actually see how to approach some of this stuff in a way that's practical and deals with some of the challenges. But where so many technologies, we're a bit awash with them. We've heard about augmented reality, VR, mixed reality and holography and everything else, but we probably don't know what the hell they are and how to use them, where they're best deployed, and how to evaluate them properly. So how are we going to do this? Are we going to start from the top, run down very briefly and just talk about where we are? We're probably with one of the technologies perhaps we're seeing more of, which is augmented reality. We're seeing slightly more of a take-up of that in AV, aren't we, for various reasons. Evan, do you want to kick us off? Just, what is it basically, and
what is it?
What is it? I mean, if it's useful. I mean, I sometimes find it just confuses us more by knowing what it is, actually.
Sure.
But anyway.
I mean, I imagine most people here probably know what it is, but I mean, augmented reality initially started out as kind of dominantly mobile-based. Kind of overlaying graphics on a camera feed of reality, and now it's kind of evolved more into mixed reality with things like HoloLens and Meta and different headsets, and now you're getting sort of hybrids between the two. So you're getting interactive store windows and fashion tryout things and all sorts of stuff. But I think it's really the kind of jargonistic terms. I think it's like any technology at the moment. A lot of people are just saying the words all the time because it's the new cool thing to do, and there's not a lot of substance to it. And I think it's the same as any medium, really. It's all going to be about storytelling and narrative and how you create compelling experiences, really.
So it's always about, isn't it? Amelia, what do you think? Is it storytelling and narrative?
Well, what I'm really excited about when it comes to AR is web AR. So this is kind of the biggest trend I've seen so far in 2019, and it gets away from having to download anything to have an AR experience, which has always created friction when it comes to things like retail and stuff. So to simply be able to point your camera at something and then have the augmented experience is really cool. And to me, I think why this could be a game changer is because it completely disrupts the customer journey. For years, I've been working with retailers who've tried to bring together the physical and the digital and e-commerce with the bricks and mortars, and this is actually kind of a solution to that because you can create things like scavenger hunts in stores. So you get people the motivation to go around and to interact with the products, and then maybe they collect 3 of them and they become a coupon, or you get something free, and all of a sudden you're having this experience that you can share on social social media. You can also share it with the people around you. But then what's really, really clever, and why I think this is going to be gold and last for a long time, is because then you can integrate it with payment systems, because we're already paying with our mobile phone. So we're able to pay with like WeChat, with Apple Pay, and then you have a seamless customer journey through the mobile, and this can be in store. So I think that's the thing that excites me the most at the moment.
How easy is it to develop apps that use this? I mean, that sounds very compelling, obviously, and it's very personal service that you need to make the customer experience more personal, don't you, to engage them with what they're buying. But how easy is it to develop apps, and who is going to be doing that?
Yeah, so the company I work with called Ignition, they're doing a lot of web AR and a lot of these web AR scavenger hunts. And you know, augmented reality is something that people have been developing on for a long time, so it's just this front end has become that much more accessible and that much easier for people to interact with. That bit at the end where you integrate it into the payment systems, that's where we're still innovating. It does work, it's been proven to work, but I haven't actually probably seen it in action yet. So I think that's coming this year, though.
There's some quite interesting stuff happening around certain platforms. For example, we've been working with Snapchat quite a lot on AR with a project for Lego, and their thing is less about getting people into stores, it's more about trying to bring you the store into your living room. And it's quite interesting with Snapchat, they've surprisingly put a lot of effort into making it very, very simple to develop, and to get that link through to the sale. So there's a project that we've been doing where you literally can, imagine if I loaded up my phone now, I can kind of walk around this space and walk into a Lego store and buy products in it, and it sends me through to a basket and so on and so on. And I think you're going to see more and more of that kind of stuff, but I agree, web AR is definitely very interesting, but at the moment there's still a bit of a barrier to entry with the development, I think.
Matthew, I mean, you know, from a fashion point of view, I mean, it seems to be a theme here, developing more retail than anything else. It's demanding new applications.
Yeah, it is, and in some ways it's for us at London College of Fashion, it's how do we build that pathway towards those sorts of experiences, and then, you know, what opportunities could exist even beyond that. And for us at the college, it's trying to change the mindset of a student body that exists with us today, and also the retailers who are in market at the moment. And developing a pathway for 3D is hugely important in developing these sorts of experiences. The industry is not particularly well trained in using 3D as a design tool. And so we have started a lot of work beginning to show to the fashion industry that creating in 3D will eventually enable them to create these assets a lot more simply. And then when you do that, you can begin to imagine what sort of experiences those could be for consumers, and whether that's 3D assets on a website and how consumers interact with it, or whether that's through a headset and experiencing something through augmented or mixed reality. And you know, Amelia described lots of really interesting applications for where that's being shown right now with retail, but I think really for us, the potential for augmented and mixed is to go even beyond that vision. I think you can imagine an entirely new computing platform. For us, where our work sits around how we help designers make their collections, show their collections, sell their collections, you could see an ability to create in virtual, in mixed, collaborate. London Fashion Week can be an entirely different experience. We were very fortunate last year to spend, a number of years working with Lucasfilm and their immersive entertainment division, ILMX Lab, to develop a new vision for the industry where we kind of believe that within a decade, mixed reality glasses will be consumer facing. And at that point, when you can add digital content to the real world, what new business models does that offer, particularly for our industry, but you know, probably for everyone in this room? There are really big opportunities ahead.
I mean, Sanj, it's interesting. I mean, at this level, you know, with creators and students and stuff, thinking differently, I suppose they're always exploring new ideas. But we've always thought these things are agency ideas, haven't we? I mean, how do we get out of that?
No, totally. And it's a really important question discussion to have now, because when I started working with AR, which was like back in 2012, the algorithms and the hardware wasn't there. So the smart devices you were using didn't really have the computing power that you needed to have an AR experience. And the algorithms, the compression algorithms that were utilizing the power of the device weren't there. So we had to build them. We had to build these algorithms to get the most out of the device. Now, 7 years later, everyone's got a device that's very powerful. The way AR is embedded into the device you already have is a lot more seamless. It's not perfect, but it's in a better place. And it allows you now to be more creative and artistic with the platform more than ever. And that's the beauty, that's the real reason people want to mess around with AR, is because it's an artistic platform. It's a new way of expressing yourself.
Yeah. Is that why it's taken off more than, say, virtual reality has? It's not quite as tactile, accessible.
Well, they're two different platforms. So VR is great, AR is great. VR and AR are two different things. People always try and put them up against each other. What's better, AR or VR? And the reality is they're both great in their own ways. They're just very different platforms. And each one has their great things. We're working with a company based in Sydney that's developed smart fabrics that you put on and it measures your body mass, and you can purchase bespoke clothing through that platform. And the problem they have is this thing that they've created is this really ugly suit. So we've chopped this suit up and made little products, so like gloves, socks, trousers, things like that, that can measure your body mass. But then from that, you transpose AR onto that, and you can see bespoke shoes being created in real time through the AR space. And again, it's not perfect, but we're starting to see a new frontier of artistic expression, which is exciting.
And I think Sanj is right about the power of devices, because from all of those kind of mocap suits that are being used to capture data, depth sensing, facial tracking from mobile devices is so good that the ability to create an avatar that is 99% accurate of the human body within a matter of seconds is right at our fingertips. And for my industry, that offers a huge range of opportunities, and everybody is going to have those devices. So yeah, that next step is super interesting to us.
It depends how all this is packaged, isn't it? Because traditionally, I've always thought there's been a bit of a disconnect in between the basic skills involved in, say, fashion, to pick this as an example, and technology, which seems to be a different discipline and so on. It's where these things are actually merging. Are they merging in the creative environment you've got at London Fashion, London School of Fashion, or is it? It seems to be a big leap for people coming in, learning how to design and so on, then start to have to think into 3D. It happened with Peter, didn't it, on Lord of the Rings? He started never having done it before, he started to film in 3D, and they were doing storyboarding in 3D. How the hell they did, I don't know. But for younger graduates and students coming through, how on earth, how is it introduced to them? How do you develop it through, essentially?
Yeah, when I look back 6 years ago, there was an enormous gap between that skill set. That's come a lot closer, but we have to work really collaboratively with the technology industry. I mean, there's software for 3D design that's been around for a long time and continues to get better. But as you look at emerging technologies, it's really impossible for us to have complete ownership over augmented, virtual, mixed, cryptocurrencies, blockchain, artificial intelligence. All of those are going to have an impact on our industry. We need access to technology, and we need to start working externally with partners. So we've just finished a year working alongside Microsoft, where Microsoft amazingly opened their doors to allow us to work with artificial intelligence, mixed reality, and wearable computing, and we'll do another round of that this year. And it will remain a vital component of how we educate a new generation in the creative industries, with direct access to technology, working closely with creative technologists to build a new future for the industry. But it's not something that we can do by ourselves. I think there is recognition that it has to be done in partnership.
I mean, we are in an age of collaboration. That's the age we're in at the moment. There's there's this kind of mindset that that someone has to learn about this technology very quickly. And the reality is, I think you just need to find someone that's skilled in that area and work with them to come up with something exciting.
But where do these people live? I mean, where is this collaboration happening?
All over the place. Yeah. We've got anyone here?
I was going to say who's in the audience, actually. I mean, nice to know what sort of audience is looking intently from us. I see not one of you is looking down at your mobile phones. They're obviously doing something right.
Have we got any coders here? Anyone that builds in yeah, there we go.
Oh, that's interesting.
Where are you from? Mexico.
Mexico.
Do you code in Mexico? Okay.
There's a lot happening with
I'll give you my
development
card.
in the open source community.
No, it's great. I mean, these skilled people are very hard to find.
Yeah.
When I was at Halician, there was this lady that Jonathan and we found. She was studying at a university in Spain called Maria. She's now at Snapchat now. She writes a lot of the face tracking code. And we had to find her. I know it sounds a bit dodgy going around the world looking for Spanish ladies to create content, but
Just goes to Spain.
yeah. But people like yourself are very hard to find, and we need to find more of them.
You were saying about the open source community.
Yeah, I mean, we find the open source community is probably the best place to find interesting people, because I personally believe the people who do the best work start with a passion.
Yeah.
And the open source community is a kind of perfect example of that, really, where people are willing to give away their work and contribute to other people's work for a shared goal.
Yeah.
And so most of our team over the last 20 years has been invested very much in that community, and long may it live on, as opposed to proprietary platforms.
How do you...
I was going to say, what really interests me too is taking different technologies and sticking them together and having that kind of collaboration. I think all headsets will include machine learning and AI within the next couple of years. I think HoloLens 2, there's a rumor it's going to debut at Mobile World Congress next month, and that is one of the headsets that's embedded with machine learning and AI. And what this means is that it starts to learn your preferences, personalize experiences, and then also be able to communicate with you. So we could get to a point where our headsets are actually saying, I'm going to turn off now because you need to go and eat. You need to go outside and get some real fresh air. So I think that's kind of neat when we start to look at how we can bring new technologies together. Another one is going back to biodata and looking at how we can create generative virtual reality experiences based on things like biodata, and then taking it a step further and using brainwaves to do the same.
It's funny, so we've hit a period of development where, in the old days, the vendors or people who manufactured the technologies did something in private that then introduced us to it, and then it'll either fly or it won't, and we'll see how the early adopters use it and pass it on and see how it develops. Now it seems it's been turned the other way around, and actually the user community is beginning to use things more intelligently, or if that's probably not the right word to use, doing what they're doing to help to try stuff because it's now available in an easier to use way, to try new things and start to work out. And they say, have you tried that? That's where potential collaboration's coming on. I mean, in a way, it's almost like a new era appearing in a sense, isn't it?
I think though
almost user-driven rather than manufacturer-driven.
Absolutely. I think there is a problem though with new ideas, that there's this kind of space race between different companies, different businesses who are trying to be the first at doing something, trying to they invest all of their time and resource into something, and they promise the future to the consumers, and then it doesn't work out, and then that type of technology has been labelled with like a sort of a tarnished brush for a while. Prime example, Google Glass. There was lots of hype behind it, and then it technically failed, even though it was a fantastic piece of engineering. I think that for some reason there's this problem where people are just trying to push things a bit too far down people's throat before the user get to engage with it.
Are we entering a period where we can have throwaway technology? Say, well, we're trying this, it may not work. If it doesn't matter. So I know we're referring to these things, as you said, with artificial intelligence has been hyped to the rafters, really. What we're using isn't really AI, but Elements, we've just done a big article on it, haven't you? So these names are being banded around. Where we should actually pay more attention to what people are actually doing, and
I think
and learning
sometimes
from
it's
that,
just-
and calling it something else, perhaps.
Yeah, I think sometimes as well it's just too early.
Yeah.
The kind of for society and culture to kind of catch up with something often takes a lot longer than the technology itself. And you tend to find the people who often will be successful from a corporate side are the ones who sit and watch the early startups, learn from their failures, and then swipe in. It's the sort of Apple model.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that threatens the collaboration a little bit and some of the open source stuff that I'm passionate about is, as everything moves very much to machine learning and AI, we're going to get to a point where there's really going to be probably less than a handful of major AIs in the world. The likes of Google, Microsoft, so on and so on, Amazon, Apple, pumping money and trying as much as they can to, obviously, garner data. The Amazon with Alexa and the fact that they basically pretty much give away the hardware is because actually what they're trying to do is consume as much data about humanity and voice and everything else to train their AI. And I think moving forwards, to be competitive with creative projects and creative output, you're going to have to use their AIs, and they're going to become even greater gatekeepers. And I think that's a little bit worrying to me.
There's always a dark side about technology, isn't there, really? And it's always the dark side we focus in on first, rather than the positive benefits of us actually trying out new things that are just challenging what we do. And that's what AV really, I'm hoping, is going to go into that sort of realm of doing things differently, and then helping us think. If we're doing things differently, it'll then help us to decide what the technology, the next step on, are going to be like, and hopefully start to develop them. Really, this is all a preliminary process of us trying new stuff out, isn't it? In a sense.
Yeah, I mean, there's also a question around research and development budgets, and particularly coming from a fashion background. Fashion brands don't have research and development budgets. You look any of those big technology companies, their R&D budgets will be bigger than the turnover of almost every major high street retailer. So we become utterly reliant on engaging with those brands. So I would agree with Evan. I think there is a question of where that power and where, from a fashion perspective, what even future retailers will look like and where they'll be coming from. I suspect they'll be coming from very unexpected, unusual areas.
Well, it's future retail and live events who are actually really engaging, because it's big money to be made. I suppose where there's immense amount of activity and life and vibrancy is where you find...
Didn't Fortnite just host one of the world's biggest concerts?
Just the weekend.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting as well, going back to something that was mentioned earlier about the fact that VR, AR, MR, they're very separate platforms, but one of the things that we're finding quite interesting that's creating sort of almost like two camps, AR versus VR, is VR is very isolating. And especially in the attractions world, one of the big things that comes up is that, if you go, for example, to a theme park or even a shared shopping experience, you don't want to be isolated. Actually, you want to share that with the people you're with. And so, we're doing a lot of prototyping at the moment in terms of using mixed reality on ride systems, for example. Because, one of the things that's really expensive, if you want to make this building look like Harry Potter world, that costs a fortune. But to do that in software, it's a lot cheaper, And so I think there's some interesting directions there. But yeah, they're running in parallel, but they often get blurred.
We tend to get confused between what I would call the informational and the experiential. Experiential, you want a wow experience, don't you? But information, you just want stuff delivered to you, perhaps in a simpler way, but more intuitively. And that's a different, presumably, experience to the one where you're wafting out like Harry playing a game, whatever it is they play, in the middle of whatever it is they play, And I think that sometimes people get confused with the more glamorous side of that and forget the really necessary, much more basic stuff that actually requires this sort of technology to really innovate it sufficiently.
I guess the question is, would you prefer to digest information in a kind of fun, gamic way? Because I think that's certainly, the first company that nails some stylish sunglasses, in collaboration with Ray-Ban that have AR in them that can tell you about your world, that will start that next chapter. And it'll most likely be Apple, in my opinion, because they've been very quiet on that. But then this question does come up, rather than reading through perhaps some boring information you've got to process for your work, if you could gamify that somehow or integrate it into the world around you, would you prefer to do that? I think I would.
I know I would. I'd love to. I think we'd both like to deliver a magazine that just, when people get it, suddenly they can experience what we're writing about by plugging into what the magazine presents in a different type of... I mean, I don't think we're anywhere near that, fortunately. But just imagine you picked up something that you were reading, and then you'd suddenly you'd be able to jump into it and experience what we're writing about, and you could see it. You know, I'd love to do something like that.
That's $1 billion piece of tech IP that I think you should
Yes.
get
I think
signed
so.
up very quickly.
Frighten the living death out of my publisher if I suggest anything like that.
We'll all come and
More
pitch
staff would be more a priority. Sorry.
We'll all come and pitch it with you.
Well, how much? Yeah, thanks. That'd be great, actually. Middle of Croydon would be wonderful. Voice actor, we've got a lot of stuff here. I mean, holography. I mean, is it worth going to this? I mean, projecting volumetric images, I suppose people think, oh, well, posh projection, doddle. But, how far can we go with existing... I mean, projection's doing amazing things. We've got 3D mapping everywhere. We've got amazing screens that people are pumping right, left, and centre. I mean, ISE tends to be a bit of a screen explosion, doesn't it, really? I mean, you go into Hall 12, and it's there. And unfortunately, you never see the development of audio that should be going with it, that adds to that experience and really blows you away, which you should be doing, really. Audio almost is invisible here if you go into separate halls. They're very much a part of it. I've always thought the way we demonstrate technologies should be all together in a way that they're seen to complement each other. And that's how we should develop stuff, so that when all these come together, that's what fuses new ideas coming out, isn't it? So, our environment works like that, and that's how we should be thinking more about it. But I mean, in terms of existing stuff like projection, I mean, are we looking at more advancements being made that where it can do really amazing stuff?
Absolutely. I mean, holography, as a AV term, has been around for a while.
It's very old as a thing, isn't it?
1862.
Exactly.
1862.
Yeah.
And it's great. Every time I get a client asking me for that type of platform, their assumption is that it's like the Star Wars R2-D2 thing, which at the moment is impossible, but that will change. The key thing for it to be successful is the narrative. The story has to engage with the consumer in the right way. And there's lots of things that can be done. So there's a project we're working on at the moment with a really amazing artist called Sarah Pope. She paints lips. They're these really beautiful lips. Check her out. She's really cool. And what we're doing with her is we're creating a hologram of those lips. Because she's an artist, she wants to do that. And we're fusing AI into it, so you can talk to these lips. So the idea, and we haven't built it yet, but we're designing it at the moment, the experience is you'll walk into this room, be a dark room, you'll sit down, and these really sexy lips will appear, and she'll start asking you questions. And we're trying to pitch Scarlett Johansson for the voice at the moment, but we'll see what happens, because their agent's just not returning our calls. But is that you can do that? So the idea is to create an emotive experience where the user engages with these lips. Yeah. Now, they could engage with the lips because they find them sexy. They could engage with the lips because they find them interesting. They could engage with them because they hate them and they want to destroy them. But what we want to do is create an experience where we're fusing tech together and creating an experience that engages. And the idea came from Peppa Pig originally, because one of my friend's daughters, she loves Peppa Pig, and she's messing around with this app where she gets to talk to Peppa Pig using AI. And she sits there for hours just talking to Peppa Pig. And that is a fantastic bit of engagement right there that needs to be, I think, needs to be transposed into other forms of AV. And so we're going to try it out with holographics this year. That's the plan.
I think the tricky thing with holograms as well is it's a completely misused term. I imagine you're talking about Pepper's Ghost, exactly. Right? Pepper's Ghost isn't a hologram. There's only
it's an illusion, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 or 3 projects that are in their infancy at the moment that could actually be classed as holography. I think we get it all the time. People ringing up and going, "I want a hologram," but people don't actually really know what they're asking for. It's somewhere between a transparent display and a Pepper's Ghost. But I do think that's a big breakthrough technology that will dominate when someone cracks it, because ultimately it's the way that you can start to bring human storytelling into environments, right? So, one of the big challenges we have is we're actually trying to do away with actors and people. because they're expensive and they have welfare issues. And ultimately, if you can, create a realistic human, hologram, whatever you want to call it, that opens up huge potential. And the same thing, go back to the AI, one of the leading companies, British company that's been bought by Google, DeepMind, their entire goal is to create a sentient creature, a sentient bot that you can talk to that you wouldn't know is an AI. Put those two technologies together, and I think that's the way the future's going.
God, Amelia.
We're very close. That AI and that visualization, we're very close. I reckon.
It takes you about,
I
with a normal bot, it takes about 10 minutes now, I'd say, before you can tell they're not real.
I think the development of digital humans, and Clive, you mentioned voice.
Yes.
That interaction between, something that is not a real person, but you're interacting. Everyone in marketing is obsessed with voice technology and what that will do. Actually, that's quite an unnatural interaction. I find that a weird way to come home and talk to Alexa. But if Alexa looked like a real person, if my Blade Runner 2049 vision of having a digital girlfriend comes real, God, you've got a house sad of mine. But that evolution of digital humans is, here there's some amazing work being done from Magic Leap to some other really fun studios in the US, that those sort of interactions and what they'll do for my industry, and I guess everyone else's, is really powerful. So we're super interested in that technology.
There's kind of a race, isn't it, between like the robotics and the kind of holography type technology, and then also the games and the VR, and everyone ultimately is just trying to recreate. It's like Frankenstein, right? We're just trying to recreate ourselves basically in whatever medium.
Yeah, what I think is going to have the biggest impact on all these things we're talking about is 5G. So we saw the introduction of this with the Winter Olympics at the beginning of last year, where Intel introduced it over in Asia, and we're seeing it kind of being adopted in the East, and it's coming west. I think, over in the West, we have a lot of infrastructures and big business in place that is actually, has a vested interest in us not getting 5G, so it's going to be a bit slower. But what it means is that all this data that we're creating all the time can start to correlate in real time. So things like autonomous vehicles, my car is learning from the environment, learning from me, learning from the car in front of me. The car behind me is learning from this car. And all this data that we're producing helps to surge that. And when it comes to things like the new realities, what this means is that when we do things like holoportation, which is, through the HoloLens, where I'm filmed as a 360-degree 3D hologram and can be, holoported, it's a real kind of beam me up Scotty moment, to another country to have a meeting face-to-face with somebody else. At the moment, there's a tad of latency, and it's still a bit pixelated, and everybody needs really good, strong internet connections, and nobody else can be on the internet at that time. It's like the old days of when we were, dialing up and that kind of thing. But with 5G, it's going to enable it to cut the latency, to increase the quality, and all of a sudden, these experiences become better for the user, and I think that's going to have a great influence on adoption.
Massive. I don't think people know it's quite coming, do they? There'll be a point on every street where there'll just be massive download and instant streaming, won't there? It'll wipe the cable companies out, probably, won't it? It'll be a new type of model. If it works. I think it probably will do, because it's got to work, I think, really.
It has to,
We've reached that point where somebody's got to give, because the quality of what we're receiving is not good enough for us to want to do what we're doing.
4G is so bad in the UK that BT offer free Wi-Fi with their 4G deals.
Yeah.
So, but hey.
But where can we see? I mean, we talked about people using technology creatively and so on. We talked about what's potentially open in the public domain and what companies are perhaps doing in private. Where can we plug in to find that and see what people are doing, and to give everybody here a bit of an inkling about what they should be keeping an eye on over the next 6 to 12 months?
You'd tell me off if I said what I was going to say.
Go on.
There's a competing magazine that begins with a W, which is a good place to start.
Wired?
Yeah.
Oh, thanks very much. That's a compliment. I subscribe, by the way.
I mean, there's loads of stuff like that. But
Fantastic, yeah.
Obviously dig around online. But
okay.
I find Wired's quite a nice mash up, and obviously AV magazine.
Well, we're trying to.
Yeah.
We're being pulled in all directions at the moment. But it's difficult to know where to actually see something actually happening.
But I would
no
say
more
the most
better
exciting
advert for it, really.
thing happens is when people come together and start having those conversations. All of the projects that we've led have come from conversations where we've been out looking and just start building and making. I would imagine there's lots of people in here who have the opportunity to start building something. And that genuinely is, they have a platform in AV Magazine to begin to showcase what they're doing. Everyone here could do some stuff. For me, that's where all of the good stuff is coming.
A lot of the technology platforms as well now are way less kind of coder orientated.
Yeah.
Anyone with basic computing skills can, for example, pick up I was talking about the Snapchat AR. You can literally create an app with virtually no technical knowledge within 5 minutes on there. And there's a lot of similar platforms depending on the context you're looking at. And so I think the idea of rapid prototyping from less technical people is already here. And I think that if you're looking for inspiration, you're looking to see what's possible. I guess it's kind of obvious, but YouTube and Vimeo are just full of anyone who's experimenting with any of this stuff. The way that's shared is by just sticking the videos online, right?
I offer a free service. I do a monthly innovation newsletter called The Big Reveal. You can subscribe on my website, ameliakallman.com. There's a shameless plug for you. And then there's also a bunch of innovation studios. I run one in London called the Ignition Demo Studio, and that's a place where people can come and get hands-on with the technologies and start to experiment and have ideas and see inspiration and get involved, basically.
We've got one of those as well, actually, if we're doing company plugs.
Yeah.
We have a seeper demo lab as well.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've got a Tiger one as well, right?
This is why we're fortunate to have these
I would
colleagues
say,
on our panels today, really.
Look for your local accelerator, because there's when I started in the tech space, there was like 3 accelerators in the world. There was Palo Alto, London, Tel Aviv. They were like the key ones that I knew of. Now there's like loads of them in every country, in every city, and there's opportunity. So if there isn't an accelerator in your town, go to your local government and get them to fund it and run it and grow your community and start to mess around with technology and bring that to the table.
Okay. Just from the floor, really, anybody working in these sort of areas that can give us a little bit of insight into what they're doing and what they've found and any kind of challenges they've come across? Be useful to know.
Watch your head.
Can you just tell us who you... Oh, yeah, it's the old catch box, yeah.
Hello.
Well done.
Yeah. So you mentioned about web AR, right? And that obviously... So I'm actually in the field of events and experiences, but we have a dedicated department which focuses on AR and VR solutions for experiential marketing. Web AR is something which we've been wanting to really get our claws into and try to get it operational for most of our events. How do we go about something like that?
Sorry, I didn't catch all that. How do we what?
How do we go about, what are the platforms for web AR which makes it much more accessible for, that's an area where we face a lot of challenges because nobody wants to download an app. And unfortunately, most AR experiences are based on downloading something or the other from an app store or a link pushed to the consumer. And when we're doing it for a small audience, it's a little bit of a problem.
So I think it depends on what you're building, what it is that you're trying to deliver through the web platform. Because the problem you have is that everyone has a completely different computer with a different spec. Same with phones. Phones, you're either Android or iOS, but then there's all different forms of Android. And the problem you have is when you're building something for web, especially if it's AR, is that it has to work efficiently on all of those platforms. And when I was at Halition, we struggled with that. So when we started writing face tracking software, lipstick trying algorithms, all of our clients wanted it to run on browser, but we just couldn't build it because it was, there was we only had 5 coders, and we had to build something that would work on everything. Now, I'm not at Halition anymore, but I found out about 6 months ago, I think it was, or about 9 months ago, they launched it on web browser. But it took them years to get to that level. I think the first thing is, what is it that you're trying to build? Is it going to exist on browser? Does it need to exist on browser? Because it could exist on something like Facebook. everyone has Facebook on their phone, and the Facebook AR kit's pretty cool. I mean, it depends what you want to do. And then once you define that, then build it and then take it to market. But ultimately, it depends on what it is that you want to build.
Okay.
Hello. Yeah. So it was more. I mean, as long as I can get some kind of accurate image recognition or marker recognition, then I can build the rest of the content accordingly. So
Yeah,
that's the main
I
challenge.
don't think people realize just how good smartphones are in this day and age. Like seriously, like the Apple face tracking software on the iPhone X, you can put into a wall and it can track so much information, which means you can control, AV, you can control doors, you can talk to it, you can blink at it, there's so much you can do, but no one's actually done anything with it yet. And it's the same with the Google AR kits and the Facebook AR kit as well.
It's worth taking a look at the Google machine learning API.
Yeah.
They've got an image recognition, a face recognition, a speech recognition. Yeah, they're really good and very easy to use.
It's baffling now. It's absolutely baffling what you can do. It's down to the creatives to, make it happen.
Okay. Anyone else? No, because Amelia's got to pop off, unfortunately. But no. So are we okay?
Can we get a Mexican wave?
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
All
oh,
right.
maybe, okay. Right.
So Sanj, Matthew, Amelia, and Evan, thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you.